Welcome, everybody. It's nice to have you back, and thank you for being back on time. It's going to be very important for us to be able to, manage time very well. Thanks once again for your attention in coming back on time. So when I said so, I did it intentionally. And I got a wonderful response. That's very good. Thank you so much. Okay. We have, over the past 2 weeks, spent a lot of time seeing, understanding, feeling, sensing, and two things have happened. A deep realization of what's not working. There are disruptions. You have put them, I think, beautifully under different themes. And so much of work and so much of thinking has gone through. Congratulations that I've seen in the papers that have been prepared. But even went deeper in terms of listening to stories and seeing and sensing and feeling what was really happening in our church here in Asia. And the good news is that you would have also sensed that in spite of all the difficulties, in spite of all the challenges, there were these moments of joy, of happiness, of sharing, which really tells us that something is working. It's not that everything is not working. Something is working. And this is the good news, that we have the capacity to acknowledge, identify, because human behavior is such that when something is working and when it is acknowledged and when it is appreciated, they want more. I did a little study in philosophy, and yet it's stuck in my brain. In ontology, I learned that being, B-E-I-N-G, is defined as an act of being in potency, in as much as it can be in potency. That means every human being really wants to be the best he can be, the best version of what he wants. Not only human being, any being. So even an inanimate thing like a marble grows, within to be its own perfection. That's the way God has designed everything. And so, in all this disruption, we see seeds of hope and we see seeds of possibility. And it is for us now to cultivate these seeds of hope. And I keep going back into the analogy of harvesting. All right? How do we cultivate the soil on which we work? And that's going to be important. We all know that collectively, whether it's in government, in society, or wherever, in the industry, or even in the church, we keep making decisions, consequences which we are seeing, which none of us really want. So what is leading to those decisions? Maybe something that we're not aware of, as a result of which these are those consequences that we are facing. We will be able to find a solution if we are able to go deeper into ourselves, all right? Because for some reason or the other, there are, just a moment, I think I touched something here. Somebody from tech on my screen. Sorry. A disruption has occurred. I'm just jumping at what is the possibility. And I found the seed of. Thanks a lot, Winston. Here we go. Now, it's important for us to see that for the new possibilities to emerge, what's going to be very critical and very, very important is for us to be able to diagnose and go deeper inside to find out what is the cause, what is that interior condition of decision makers at whatever level, all right? As I said, leadership is distributed, okay? So the blame or the gain is all across, with leadership being distributed. But to be able to develop the knowledge and the understanding of what needs to be done, we have to develop this ability to understand the awareness of what is happening on the soil we are working on. And this, my dear friends, as I said a little earlier, is going to be of significance and important for us. So there is hope, because with every disruption, there is a possibility. And every change and transformation that has happened across the globe in the universe has happened only because of a disruption that has taken place. And that is our hope. Now, the important thing is this. It's about a journey about looking within ourselves. And so, how do we begin this journey about looking at ourselves? And the first and the most important thing for us to understand is when something is not working, when we are not getting the results that we really want, there is a system in operation. There is a system working. I talked about the iceberg. We can't see what's above the ground. We can't see what's above the water level. We can see only 10% of those are behaviors. Behaviors are visible. But what's below that is a host of structures that we create. A whole host of systems that we create. All right? And if we go deeper down, there is something that is inspiring us to create those structures and those systems. And the moment we realize that something is not delivering what we really have, because we all have those good intentions, then we need to go deeper into ourselves. And how we do that is what we are going to do in the whole process of Theory U. So actually what we are talking about, the moment something is not working, it's very clear that the system that's working, what's under the ground, is operating from an ego system. And you all know what ego is all about. It's about me first. It's about my views. It's about what's right. I am right. It's about why was I hurt? Why was I not consulted? How did this happen? It's all about me. And as leaders, can we transmit to our people the understanding that the moment we experience this, all right, we have to develop a consciousness and an awareness that something has to start now, a deep awareness in the social system that is within us to check and identify what is the cause of this. And bottom line, there is what we may say, if I can use the not just motivation, there's an inspiration, even for something that's not going right. And even if something that is we don't want in terms of what's happening. But there is an inspiration that is leading to that. And quite often, I don't realize what is that inspiration. And this is only going to come in through observation. Observe, 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 and then retreat and reflect. Observe what? The reality of what you are sensing. Retreat and reflect on that reality. And when you retreat and reflect, all right, in the right way, and which we are going to learn that methodology, you're now beginning to move from the left side of the U, which is to the ego, to the right side of the U. And once you start moving on that side, then action becomes very, very important. Okay? So this whole theory U piece is based on what is known as action research model. All right? So we are called to act and reflect. Never in the mind, we always thought, let's first think. I'm not saying we don't have to think, all right? But when you're on the right side and you're trying to do something and change the ecosystem, you act on what you want to do. Correct, good, observe, modify, and change. Only then change, transformation begins to work. And we'll see how we do that. We're going to do that ourselves over here. And so, my dear friends, we will have you have talked and seen about the church in Asia. In fact, globally as well, there are these three major divides, right? And what appeals to me the most and what's really giving me a lot of hope is this whole aspect that there's a huge awareness already now, all right? And this awareness is there really at different levels, okay? You can have an awareness at a hierarchical level, at the level of the curia, at the level of those who are leading the church. You can have an awareness at what we may call a stakeholder level, where individuals who are concerned about that particular issue, that awareness begins to grow. You can have an awareness at the level of ego, because it's me, all right? Something about me, that's all. You can have an awareness at that level, all right? But what's going to be most critical and important for us is to be able to develop an awareness which is at a level from a holistic and a generative point of view. If we are able to develop that from a holistic and a generative point of view, considering the impact on different stakeholders, then something is really important. And the good news for all of us is that, I have such an admiration for Pope Francis. All of you have such an admiration for him. So we talk about the first divide now. This is not, these divides are actually, something that's now globally acknowledged, accepted. I'm not going to talk more about it. You know more, a lot of it. But just look at it. Each of these three divides I'm going to be talking about, all right? The divide between the ecology and the self, the divide between society and myself, and the divide between myself and myself. I'll talk about what that really means. That's a spiritual divide, okay? And imagine, Pope Francis, and all of you have studied this document, it's so magnificent. I was lucky to get a chance to work with Bishop Alvin on Laudato Si in the Diocese of Bombay, and you could just see the wealth of how the Pope has actually gone deep in. But most important for us to understand now, if something has to really change or be transformed at the family level within we are talking, or at the parish level, or whatever we are talking about, that is only going to happen if we are able to journey within and try and understand what is it that will inspire us to be able to make this change and transform. What is it that is stopping us from making this change and transformation? What is it is sort of encouraging certain parishes to take this initiative? What is it that is not encouraging certain parishes to take it? That requires a journey, that requires a reflection. And how we do that is something we are going to experience. The next divide is the social divide. The social divide is the divide between myself and the society. This, my dear friends, is another huge divide, and it happens at different levels. I'll come back to the first ecological divide because it just strikes me right now that, whatever research and studies, I know I wanted to skip this because you have already been hearing so much about it. But what really strikes me is that in the state in which we are today, we are consuming 1.5 times the Earth's 1.5 planets capacity to regenerate itself. Okay? That is the rate at which, okay, the ecology is beginning to disintegrate, 1.5 times. Generally, on an average. Now, there are countries like the United States of America where it's 5 times, or 5 planets capacity to regenerate itself. And that's humongous, right? And that's very, and that's why Pope Francis has taken this so very closely. The social design, all right? Once again, what do you see over here? And we're having this social divide at different levels, all right? In offices, at workplace, at the political front, between me and the society, between me and my workplace, there's a huge challenge that's coming out over there. And once again, you have Pope Francis who really addresses this. You see in the document, Fratelli Tutti, Cry of the Earth. It's basically the cry of the poor and the marginalized, all right? Any one of his encyclicals you can find will have its reference to the three divides. And the last one, which is the spiritual divide, and this is very important. I'll spend 2 minutes on this, because this is the divide between myself, small s, and the big S of Leslie. What is this small s of Leslie? This small s of Leslie is what Leslie is today. What he is today. And the big S of Leslie is actually Leslie as I am called to be in terms of my full potential coming out and getting realized. So there's a gap between my individual small self and the big self. All right? And unless I'm able to address this in a very deep and solid way, unless I'm able to see that I'm not doing what God's calling for me is, I'm going to be facing a challenge. And so, in the process of what we are doing today, it's fundamental for me as an individual, it's fundamental of each one of us as individuals to answer the basic question, which as a little child I learned in Sunday school, but possibly I learned it as rote. Who am I? And what is my work here? Who am I and what is my work here? And if I am conscious and aware of who am I and what is my work here, I will have that realization there is so much of my potential that has not come out into the world as the world needs that. That awareness is critical. And if each one of us are able to spread this message and encourage each other, which Pope Francis himself has done in his documents, is something which I think, my gosh, why these things keep coming up here? Once again, tech, this is not my computer, it's all in some other language. I think one of you can sit down over here because it's creating a challenge for me. And so once again over here, as I was saying, Pope has come out with encyclicals, he has come out with documents. Lumen Fidei is one of those, okay, where you're really talking about the light of faith. Yeah. Thanks. Sorry about that, okay? And so it's going to be very, very critical for us to, if any change or transformation has been happening, if we want to change what we are here, if we're going to walk on a new pathway, the way we want to walk onto a new pathway, we have to start working on this realization of, okay, who am I and what is my work? And we're going to spend time on these, answering these questions as well, okay? In order to do this, my dear friend, it's going to be absolutely critical and important for us to activate the intelligence of our heart. And the only way we can activate the intelligence of our heart is to develop an open mind, an open heart, and an open will. Is it easy? Not really easy. Is there science behind how we can open our mind and our heart and our will? Yes, there is a science. But beyond the science that is over there, and it's my own personal experience and my belief, I think it's the work of the Holy Spirit to help me to open my mind, open my heart, and open my will to move from the ecosystem in which I am up to the ecosystem to be the best I can be. To be the best I can be. And so to be the best diocese I have and the potential of what diocese we are, we have the resources in our diocese, which is not just what's in the diocese, and when we talk of resources, the financial or the material resources. No. The resources are largely the people of our diocese. And in our diocese, the people of different communities also become part of this. So how do I open my mind? How do I open my heart? And how do I open my will? Becomes so very, very important. Okay, now we are going to be moving into something that's very important, and I need your attention. If anybody has a question to ask, please write it down. And we will have an opportunity to talk about it. So before I move ahead, I had one question from Bishop, who said, please explain the iceberg model. It's a very important thing. Now, talking about the iceberg model, as I said, you have a memory of it. You have on top of the surface, just 10, 15%. Below the surface are systems. Do you understand what systems mean? Below that are structures. We know what structures mean. These systems are not visible to the outside world. Even these structures are not very clear. Structures may be to some extent clear, but really not fully clear. But systems and the paradigms, which really means the guiding principles of our behavior, all right? And lastly, what's most important is the inspiration from which, our behavior moves. And those of us who have studied, or all of you have studied psychology, every behavior is driven by a motive, all right? There is some, whether the behavior is leading to a positive or an enabling result or to a disenabling result. It's driven. There's a source of inspiration. This source of inspiration could either be, a fear of not being accepted, or the source of inspiration may be the desire to please. The source of inspiration for that behavior may be the fear of losing control, or the fear of wanting control, or the desire of wanting control. The inspiration may either be the desire to be acknowledged, to be respected for the position I hold. The fear may be of being repudiated or being abandoned. This person I nurtured, I grew, and what all did I didn't do. But he has acted contrary to what I've said. There are numerous hosts of drives that are under the surface. I may not even be conscious of what it is that causes me to behave in a particular way. It is your job, it is my job to work on this, all right? And this is not going to be, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's possible. And honestly speaking, once you start working on yourself through the iceberg, and we are going to do this even today, you will find great joy, great value in actually wanting to replicate this and cultivate the soil in which you are even more in this direction. So when you're talking about theory U, the most important thing and the first step in theory U is A. What's the challenge I have on hand? We have many challenges, correct? For every challenge, we need to address it in a way. And the way theory U is encouraging us is to co-initiate. Now, what does co-initiate really mean? Co-initiate really means is to become one with those people from where the challenge is occurring. And in that process, we are actually trying to find out what do we want as a common purpose? What do we want as a common intent? Now, very, very often we try to solve problems skipping this first step, okay? We actually come with solutions which we have thought of, we have reflected, with a lot of good intention. But fundamentally, we have not included, and this is what the whole synodal process is all about, all right? This is what the inclusive church we are talking all about, is to be able to co-initiate those who do not agree with us, those who have a difference of opinion in what we are saying. It's about creating a container in a particular way that we can actually hold during this entire journey of a change and transformation. So, to uncover a common intention is the first and the most critical part of this entire U journey. How is this done? This cannot be done by delegation. This cannot be done by issuing a note or a decree. This can only be done by actually going to the place and having a dialogue, at least with the major stakeholders involved in the challenge which you really want to resolve. Today we are going to do something which is known as an empathy walk. It's a tool, it's a technique. It can be used at this stage, all right, which becomes so very valuable, and depending on what is the challenge that you have, we prepare ourselves with questions to have this very, very personal conversation. And the only conversation is to build closeness of the two hearts that are talking, or the group of people. And that's the only thing that's happened. How do we do that? So it's about creating this, this vessel, or this container which can hold, all right, the stakeholders in some form or the other with a common intent. And that's really very critical for us to be able to do. More importantly, my dear friends, at this stage, I have to clarify for myself, what does God want me to do? Or some say, what does life want me to do? But in our case, we can say very clearly, what is God? What is my calling in life, okay, for dealing with this particular situation? And every situation has its own challenge. Every situation will have its own calling from God for you to respond. And that's going to be critical and important. The next one is co-sensing. Now, co-sensing is extremely valuable, extremely important, and there are tools which we will use of co-sensing. You have done this when we did the synodal process, all right? What did we do? We dialogued, we talked, we co-sensed. I had a huge experience when I had this synodal conversation with transgenders that are around the place and typically are found at the corners of streets begging, and the paradigms that were in my mind, the paradigms that get sort of, entrenched, they sort of melt when you have an opportunity to actually co-sense. And when you can't co-sense unless you actually have this clarity of purpose about why you are wanting to meet them. And it's a huge thing if you do it with any challenge, any problem. Go out to the stakeholders, and most important, your cardinals and bishops, as Pope Francis says, go to the periphery, go to those whom you think are least, influential in that situation. And you will really begin to see deeper down the watermark, deeper down the iceberg of what's really driving society, what's really driving behavior, why do people remain marginalized, why do we have good intentions, but the attention to those intentions are not there, because somewhere down in the waterline mark below there is a belief system, all right? That can only be transformed, changed, if you begin to co-sense. And you co-sense by actually going out with this entire spirit, all right, of wanting to know the reality. So it's part of knowing what the emerging realities are, okay? Now, I can understand the emerging realities by reading a document, but it's a totally different thing about understanding the emerging realities, because when I am in that situation, the Lord is working, okay, to make me action something, to resolve, all right, that something that has been a disruption. That's something that has taken people away from the church or whatever. And there is no supplement. So we listen, all right, with an open mind. We listen with an open heart, and we listen with an open will along the journey of you. How do we open our minds? How do we open our hearts? How do we open our wills? Is something that definitely we are going to be talking about, all right? And it requires practice, but it's something that's really worth doing. The next step in the theory U is presencing. That is, we now connect with the source of inspiration. And I like to say, what is the source of inspiration? We connect with that source that is actually answering my call. That source is, why did God make me? Who am I? All right? And when I consciously become aware of what is my calling and who am I can promise you, and I can tell you from my own experience, many other walls that have been created by me begin to fall by the wayside. All right? And it is in order to reach the state of presencing, we have to, having co-sensed, we have to retreat. We have to remain silent. We have to look for inspiration, and my gosh, we as Catholics, we as believers are privileged, because this is where the Holy Spirit starts working. This is where the Holy Spirit convicts us and tells us, Leslie, this is what you need to give up. This is something that you need to sort of let go of. It's about letting go so that in that challenging situation now you can let come of something new, something different, all right? And this is inspiration. This is the work of God. This is the work of Holy Spirit. I don't take credit for that. The credit goes out there to Him, because I know who I am. But when I start reflecting on what I am, all right, in the real sense of the word, and understand the gap between knowing and doing, transformation now begins to happen. So we go to that source of inspiration and will. This is about, letting fear go. And there are tremendous amount of fears that are going to stop us from doing what we want to do. The root cause of leadership, the root meaning of leader comes from an Indo-European meaning of light, all right, which means stepping forward, stepping into the unknown. It means giving up. Most important, it means dying. And unless I die to something, nothing new is going to be born. Now, what is that calling on? What is it I need to give up? What is it I need to die? And these are things that, unless you think and journal about it and write about it, transformation is not going to be happening at any. And I'm not here to talk about personal transformation alone. For me, it's a mission now, as part of the world mission of MIT, all right? This has to go into the entire society, because there has to be a renewal of civilization. Because the way society is getting disintegrated, we all know what it is, and it's going at an accelerated speed. And the only way this will challenge is for us to go back through this, which I believe is a truly Christocentric approach, all right, of more of change and of transformation. So take up, all right, immediately a prototype of what you're doing. Experiment with what you want to do. Don't worry about making mistakes, because the Holy Spirit has inspired you to this, and He is going to help you do this. In the next slide, I'll really talk about something very, very important, which is going to further explain what I am talking about, all right? You prototype what you want to do, and finally, what's really going to happen is you want to institutionalize this, all right? So it becomes a co-evolving process. Tomorrow you are moved to another diocese, what you had started will not die. Most religious with whom I work tell me, well, Leslie, my worry is that we are saying this is all good, nice, but I get transferred every 5 years. So I don't know whether the next man is going to have or take interest in what I have done. Am I right? That's a big concern. That's a big challenge. But if I focus my attention on the ecosystem around me and consciously do that, all right, then there is hope, there is courage. The good that is begun will continue to exist. Okay. I'll move on to something that's related to this, which is very, very important, okay? So in the process of theory U, all right, something happens. So whilst you say, when you co-initiate something, be sure there are 3 very, very important, we can say, resistances that will come. The devil comes to play. An act is the voice of judgment. And what is the voice of judgment? All right? The voice of judgment takes me back to the old situations. The voice of judgment tells me, hey, Leslie, man, you tried this last time, it's not going to work this time. It's a gone case, all right? The voice of judgment. This voice of judgment gets exercised when it comes to people, when it comes to wanting to change something, when it wants anything that requires me. It's constantly actually coming and wanting me to actually stay in that habitual mode of my behavior, of how I have been behaving in the past, okay? I just begin to download my past experience. The more experience I have, the voice of judgment is even stronger. And for me to let go of this voice of judgment becomes extremely difficult. The only way I can do this is to practice what we may call suspending the voice of judgment. And this is something that requires practice. And this is something that also we can do if we trust, okay, and allow this curiosity to take root in us, all right? So we hold on to anything that is stopping us from what we do. We suspend the voice of judgment as we walk down the U, okay? When you suspend the voice of judgment and you consciously look at the situation with a new and fresh eyes, what's really happening? Your mind now, we talked about open mind. If you want to develop an open mind, this is the way to do it. Try and look at the situation having suspended your judgment with a new, fresh pair of eyes. And to develop this capacity, to develop this capability, you need to be curious. You need to be curious. You need to sort of, say, let's see, let's try, let's see what's new, let's see what's different. And once you're able to allow that curiosity, that, children are very, very curious, all right? Unless we're able to do that, we will not inquire, because inquiry becomes so very critical and so very important, okay? To inquire what's different and what's new. So suspending the voice of judgment. And as we go through our experience in the next few days, you're going to have multiple opportunities to suspend, multiple opportunities to find out how your voice of judgment is kicking in at different points of time, whilst you are at work or whilst you are in an exercise. And what you need then to do is to believe in yourself that you see, only human beings have got this capacity, nobody else can do it. We talked about bees, correct? And the honeycomb. Bees are supposed to have the highest level of coordinating capability. Bees are supposed to have the highest level of coordinating capability, even higher than yours and mine. But remember one thing, they can't change what they are patterned to do. Only you and I have got this gift, it's a gift, to be able to change that pattern. And that gives us a hope that we can open our minds effectively. The second danger, the second small little devil that kicks in is the voice of cynicism. And now what's the voice of cynicism, What's the voice of cynicism? Leslie, you are dealing with this Mr. So-and-so. Has anything good come out from there? Reminded you of a biblical story, no? The voice of cynicism stops us from trusting. The voice of cynicism takes us away from uncovering reality. And the moment we sense a voice of cynicism, a voice of skepticism, a voice of doubt coming inside, we have the capability, the capacity, the competence to redirect this voice of cynicism. And we can do this only if we are seeing things with a fresh eye. If we haven't seen things with a fresh eye, the voice of cynicism will kick you and will get into you and take you back to where you are and have the established head. Then there's no difference between you and the bee. So critical to do that, because this has the capacity for us to open the heart. And what is opening the heart about is to be able to sense the field, okay? To meet people, to actually have that one-on-one conversation. And we are going to do that today itself, okay? And experience what this really means to sense the feel as it is. So open mind, open heart. And what does an open heart really do? Now, this is one thing that, unfortunately, we have stopped believing that it is critical, that it is important. And surprisingly, and more surprisingly, this is becoming one of the most important capabilities that now organizations and the corporate world is looking at. The ability to have an open heart and to be more empathic. And this lesson was learned when? It got learned now because of the pandemic. And people began to become more conscious, and leaders were told to become more careful, all right? So opening the mind, opening the heart, if you're going down the U, becomes so very critical. And the only way to open our heart is to empathize and to sense from the field. And the last voice that really stops us, and the big one that comes in the way, is the voice of fear. Oh my God, this creates havoc. This actually stops anything new from happening. Because we are so happy with allowing things because, I've got the experience of the past. I don't want to risk this, all right? I don't want to take a chance. This is what comes in the biggest way for us to be able. And so we end up staying in that crucible of our habits, and nothing begins to change because of fear that does not. But if we trust, and if we open our heart, and if we open our mind, and we are working towards the inspiration, the guidance of the Holy Spirit at the presence and bottom that we are really talking about, it will open our will and dilute the fear, because we have nothing to fear when God is with us. I can talk this openly over here in front of you, with you. It's difficult for me to say this with another group, but if this is what we believe in, what St. Paul says, if God is with me, who can be against me? And if I'm journeying around theory U, we can do much more than any other normal human being can do when it comes to managing change and transformation. It is my firm belief that we can be better, all right? This is that superpower, okay? As change management, as change leaders, that is there with us, and it's coming only because of our belief, a true belief of the power of the Holy Spirit with us. So we go to that source. Ultimately, I'm connecting with this, and I'm repeating this often. Who am I? You got to write that down tonight. Write that down tonight before you go to bed. Who is myself? What is my work? What is God calling me to do now, whatever is my age? I'm 73 today, Leslie. I have to every morning sit down in a corner and ask myself this question, Leslie, who are you? What is your work? And the moment I have that realization, become conscious, at a conscious level, it helps dilute much of my ego challenges that I am facing at my workplace. I have challenges, right? I'm sure you all have challenges as well. So this is fundamental. The theory U process will not move unless I spend time on this and response, okay? Bring that to awareness. You might have consciously done it in the past. Bring it back again. It becomes important to every day of my life bring this into activation mode. who is myself and what is my work? Basically, why did God create me? In other words, what is my work? And this will set to place many of the dilemmas that we are talking about, many of the challenges that we are coming. This will help me to let go. This will help me to let my ego die in a way. To be more specific, it will tell me what exactly I should really give up. What is that particular insistence of a point of view? What is that particular thing that I really need to be more consultative about and more engaging, whatever it may be. And what is it that I need to let come? All right, and when I let come this something new, believe me, when you let come something new, what's really happening, the change and transformation is something where you as an individual will feel, you will feel different. You will feel new. You will feel a higher sense of being about yourself. That is the essence, all right, of moving. See, the word presencing comes from two words. It comes from sensing and being present, correct? So when I sense in the present, I'm not only looking at the emerging realities, but I'm now beginning to understand what are the emerging possibilities and what I need to do to let those emerging possibilities come alive. So I take a project, a small one, work on that, test it, check it, and see it work, and then work towards what we may call, and there is a system and a process which I will also like to share that with you. We crystallize this. So we have to have this internal vision for that particular aspect that we are talking about, put it into action, and then you prototype something that's new, and let it become embodied into your system. Now there's a new system at work, there's a new process at work, quite different from the one that is giving you the results that you don't want. So it's very important to know what are the things that are happening in my diocese that I don't want. I need to articulate that first. At an individual level, of course, but more at a diocesan level now, since we are representatives of leadership in our church. Okay? If you have any questions to ask me at this stage, I will listen to that and hopefully respond, because the next piece which I want to share with you before we get into an exercise is about levels of listening, all right? And that's going to be very important for us. So can I move ahead? Yes? Oh, wonderful. Now, it's either that you are understanding what I'm saying, and I'd like to believe that. Okay? All right. Now, dear friends, this entire process of theory review does not work. It doesn't work. Then why am I talking about it? It doesn't work if I don't develop a fundamental skill, right, of listening. Oh, I've been teaching in business school. I spent so much time teaching communication. I thought I knew everything about listening. But now, as a student of the youth school, all right, which I'm currently now, I found something amazing about what Otto Sharma has spent time reflecting and talking about what listening really is. So I want you to pay good attention to this, because we are going to do a very interesting exercise after this. So, now there are two important things. Very often when we listen, we are looking with the focus, the periscope, or the telescope outside on what's going wrong in the system. It's out, correct? I know that the system is producing these results which I don't have, so I'll either appoint a consultant or I'll appoint somebody, I'll do a survey, all that is good, I'm not saying it's bad. But it is not sufficient, because I have excluded myself from that system that exists where I am living and where I have a leadership role. And so it becomes very, very important for me to turn the focus, all right, the beam of my observation from, I'm not saying not have the beam of observation outside, but I need to first turn the beam of observation inside. What is it that I'm observing about myself? What is it that I'm observing that is blocking my mind? If something is happening, what is it that is blocking my heart, because of which, and I don't want to see this guy, or I don't think I can talk to him, or I don't want to. We all have these situations. The call is to turn the beam of observation on myself. And I have to do that if I really, sincerely want to do. And this is quite a hard thing to do, because it's going to call for me to be vulnerable. It's going to call for me to be humble. But isn't that what Jesus Christ wants? Didn't he ask us to be meek? Which really means be vulnerable in today's management jargon. Didn't he call me to be humble? And today, believe me, the corporate world is borrowing from us, from the source of the scriptures in the Bible. The latest leadership, there are 5 leadership levels, and the characteristic and the quality of the highest level of leadership, which is level 5, you know what's the virtue in those leaders? Humility. Humility has come out as the highest capacity, capability of leaders who actually get the best results. Vulnerability is another important thing being talked about. Readiness to, I don't have to wear a mask. It's okay that I have this fault. It's okay if I accept it, but I need your help because this is what I lack. Unless I turn the beam of observation on me, I will not have these discoveries that is going to lead me to do what I need to do, to listen well. I had this huge awakening when I actually reflected on this, all right? I had to junk all my lecture notes on listening and communication, which I thought I did very well when I was doing business cases and stuff of that type. This is very critical, and this is very, very important. So what are the levels of listening? As I said, theory U will not work unless we are able to open our mind, our heart, and our will. Now, what happens? There are 5 levels of this, and the first level, all right, of listening is downloading. That is listening from habit. Now, what is the source of my listening? Is listening from habit, which really means that, I've got all this experience in life in the 73 odd years of my, how many hours a day am I actually spending listening? All of you, I can tell you, spend at least 16 hours a day listening. Because you're all awake, you sleep, I know that you guys work hard, you sleep only 5 hours a day. Am I right? So if you're not talking to someone else and listening, you are listening to yourself. Am I right? So, now what's happening at this level of listening, I am confirming whatever I already know, whatever I've already experienced. Yes, Francis, I can understand you. Yes, Maria, I've heard of a very similar situation in my earlier parish. Yes, this tallies so much with my own experience. This is what we call listening from habit. So what is happening, consciously or unconsciously, I am confirming what I already know, and I feel good about that. I'm not saying it's bad, right? I'm not saying this is bad. It is there. It is important. We need to download, from our experiences. We can't let that go. Our experiences are important. But let us be conscious and aware that what we are really doing is we are not going beyond confirming what we already know. And when we limit ourselves to this, there are consequences. Does this open my mind to anything? No. The second level of listening is what we call factual listening. And what is factual listening? Factual listening is that listening where I am attentive. Is that listening that I am looking for something I don't know. And I am very attentive to what is being said. And in fact, not only that, I am also searching for information that, in a way, this confirms what I already know. I'm being humble, correct? I'm being open. What does this do? It opens my mind. It allows something to happen within me. But I'm consciously doing this and picking up things that I know. Now, this is the type of listening that really happens in organizations, in our workplace, when we are serious about wanting to do a lot of research and a lot of things happening. It's all very good, and we spend a lot of time doing this. And there are good results that are happening in all organizations, in all work teams, in all projects that are happening. All very good, opening the mind. Now, there's nothing new about this. We all know this, of course. The third one, as I said, in this we are looking at disconforming information. The third one now is what we are talking about, empathetic listening. Now, what is empathetic listening? Okay? We all know what empathetic listening is, Leslie. But this is really listening from within. Empathetic listening is actually, we all know empathy is to putting yourself in someone else's shoes. But the real empathetic listening is to listen from the field, from the source, from the field of the other person. And when you are listening from the source of the other person, when you're listening from the field of the other person, when you're looking from the experience and the hurt and the concern, and actually being able to empathize, you are opening the second window for change and transformation along the journey of Theory U. And that is, you're beginning to open your heart. And when you do this, you are sensing through the eyes of the other person. And what really happens, I may think that I'm sensing through the eyes of the other person, but at the end of that process, of that conversation, if I have not connected emotionally with that individual or that person, then there is a journey that has not been completed. Maybe I need to go back to the levels of 1 and 2 and spend some time over there before I come down to level 3. If you walk down through the process, it only makes your process of listening stronger, otherwise it may be quite superficial. And so that's the third level of listening, all right? To be able to see and openly in the eyes of the other. The next level of listening is the fourth level, which is really generative listening, is listening from the field. Now, what's really happening over here, and we are going to practice that today, is you're getting into a conversation, you're getting into a dialogue, all right? And you can't do this unless you have gone through the earlier levels of listening in a way. But in this, what's really happening, something new is emerging. The conversation is going in the direction where new life in some form is being born. A new seed is being cultivated, which in fact is, all right, addressing your need for change. So generative listening opens my will to do something, even though it may be difficult, but I do it with joy, I do it with happiness, because I'm ready to let something die in order to get something good happening out over there, and that's what we call listening. It's about holding the space, all right, for something new to be born. These are the 4 levels of listening. For something new to be born. I know I'm running out of time. 1 o'clock is what we... Okay. Don't worry, I'll manage time. So,
Leslie,
yes.
could you give some time to react there?
Yeah.
Maybe just 5 minutes to react of what you have mentioned here.
Yeah, please do that. Any questions so far? Please. Feel free, somebody with a mic, please. Yes, please. Yeah, the mic there.
I'm Bishop Varghese Chakalakal from India. Thank you, Mr. Leslie, for giving a talk on listening. I liked it. I just want to compliment something for listening. Spiritual writers say, listen with the mind. Listen with the heart. Listen with your touch. Listen with your eyes. There are these 3 types of listening also. And there is no time to explain. Listen with the heart means listen with love. Listen with the mind means not be sitting on a judgment. That means you must not have any prejudiced ideas when you hear a person. Listen with the touch means you know what to let go and what let come in. So these 4 levels of listening also are there. I just want to compliment what you said.
I totally, 100% endorse what you're saying. To be able to listen with your mind, you have to suspend judgment, correct? Can you see that there? Very, very important. The voice of judgment. VOJ is voice of judgment. Thank you very much, Bishop. It's very important. Listen with your heart is absolutely so critical, and that's what we talk to. Open your heart. That means listen with your heart. To see things with fresh eyes. And listen also then finally with an open will. Thank you very much, Bishop. It totally endorses this. Yeah? Very correct. Yes?
The microphone, please, in the front.
Thank you, Professor. My question is, everything that you are telling us has something to do with the unconscious, the role of the unconscious, especially in this listening. So can you say something about the unconscious as it really affects us in our dealing with one another?
Good point. When we do things out of habit, no? And very often we are not conscious of what we are doing, no? At some stage or the other, we are not conscious. If I'm the early stages of my learning to drive, I'm very conscious with every time I change the gear. At some stage later, I do not know how I reached home, but I've reached home. It's totally, I'm not conscious of it. Now, what we are talking about is very, very important. Each one of these levels of listening that we are talking about, all right, calls for an actual conscious effort. Because unless I consciously practice these different levels of listening, I will start listening from my habit, all right? And most often, I'm going to do a small Mentimeter exercise to ask us, between these 4 levels of listening, and we have 16 hours a day, I'm going to ask you to respond to something very interesting, yeah? So, any other questions so that we can then move ahead otherwise? Any other question from Bishop? Anybody's hand up? Yeah? No? Yes, please. Come running.
One more. Yes.
Yes, my lord.
Thank you for your systematic presentation. I have a problem with the first part where you mentioned about the disruption. So, from the disruption, you said that it gives a seed of hope. Am I correct?
Yes.
But my question, whether we justify disruption, because the Lord himself said, the poor is always with you. So, from all these challenges, all these problems, this cause disruption, and do you justify the disruption as it is a fate? There are a lot of people suffering. So we are here to confront the challenges and find out new pathways. But my assumption is that just like other people say, all these are the fate, and we have to face it with hope. My question, do you justify the disruption?
Good question. Thank you very much, Bishop. Unfortunately or fortunately, I We are all living in this world, okay, whether we like it or not, no? As I said before, lots of decisions are being made by leaders, no? As a result of which, there are consequences. Whether it's in the area of climate change, whether it's in the area of governance. Take the education bill, or take any other law. There's some disruption that happens, am I right? Now the challenge is, you can't help because you're living and you're in a system in which you are living. As a leader now, I have to have the ability to be able to respond to these disruptions, no? And unless I am able to see a seed of hope or search for that, all right, and see something good that can emanate into a possibility, I will be stuck. And there's one very important thing, it's about getting stuck. I was reading somewhere in one of your papers, it's told the whole situation, sometimes we feel we are stuck in a situation. Now, nobody wants to be stuck, all right? We have to be able to unstuck ourselves. And for that, by God's grace, if you're able to work on the soil to unstuck that situation, you can possibly have an emerging new future out of that current challenge. And that's where moving down the U would be helpful. So we have to come to that bottom of the U, which is so very critical. And at that stage, we have to be able to be ready to give up our fear, all right? And what is holding us back from making a leap of faith? Why do we say leap of faith? And we have so much in our scriptures that encourages us to do what we should be doing, all right, that I think it's worth the effort. Otherwise, we will remain stuck in the disruptions that are happening. And, oh my gosh, it's happening all the way. Whether it's in Ukraine or it's in India or in America, huge disruptions. And sometimes we are not conscious of that. Take, for example, now United States is spending millions of dollars on security systems, correct? Millions and millions of dollars, and having so many bases around the world to protect their security. Am I right? Now look at this situation. Where does the real tragedy happen? Where did 9/11 happen? Are you there with me? Now this is where we really need Capitol Hill. It happened just down there. There's so much happening under the surface that didn't get noticed, and which resulted in that. So these are the types of disruption that are happening globally. Pandemic was a disruption? Yes. Did opportunities arise because of pandemic? I know there were challenges. I know people couldn't go to church, but there are parishes that have used digitalization. Even to get people who never went to church, I know of stories, who started at least virtually hearing Mass because they couldn't go to another room. But it happened. So there are opportunities, but we have to consciously work on these opportunities. Okay? I hope I have been able to address your question, my lord. Thank you. Okay. Yes, please.
One more question down there.
Bishop Ledesma. Oh. Okay.
Bishop Rojas from the Philippines. Might it also be useful to differentiate listening from the opposite, those who are not listening. One model of the levels of listening mentions ignoring, or pretending to listen, or selective listening. Might all of these levels amount to listening from habit?
Can somebody help me with the question? Can the question be repeated for me? I haven't understood the question. Sorry. You can come closer over here, it'll help me.
We all presuppose that we are listening. But the fact is, some of us, or many of us, may not even be listening. So might it be useful to contrast listening with not listening? One model of the different levels of listening mentions ignoring, pretending to listen,
Yes.
when maybe you're not listening but you're pretending. Selective listening.
Yes.
Might these levels be the same as listening from habit?
Yes, yes. Wonderful question. Thank you. You are a thinking person. Beautiful question. Thank you so much. So, what you raised, actually ignoring. Have you seen this in office, that you go to someone in some office, you're talking to that person, and the person is doing something, and he's carrying on doing what he's saying, what he's doing, and he says, "Go on, I'm listening to you, carry on." Have you had that experience? Go ahead, I'm listening to you. All right? Now, what's really happening is listening from a habit. He's downloading already before he said what he has to say. And we do that very often. The moment I see the face of someone, I know what he's come to tell me. Okay? So, yes, ignoring, once again, that also can arise out of habit. And when do we ignore? Do we ignore everybody? No. We choose whom we ignore. And not that we choose consciously every time. It's become a habit. We do this at home with our own children. We listen to some more, and we listen to some less. We do this with our team in the clergy. We give a listening ear to some, a little more of a listening ear to some, and we possibly maybe giving a little less of a listening ear. I'm not saying you can give the same amount of listening to everybody, but the fact remains that there is this that happens. Okay? But we need to be conscious. If I'm giving a less listening ear, I need to be conscious that I'm consciously doing it, all right? And how is that affecting the relationship? How is that person going away from me? Is that empathetic listening going to happen? Is the relationship going to be built for me to go down can I expect a change that I am going to announce in the diocese to be implemented? These are the questions we need to ask.
The last one,
Nice
Archbishop
question, thank you.
Ledesma. Last one.
But we'll get ready for the Mentimeter after this, okay? Quick.
Yes, thank you for this explanation of theory U. In our archdiocese, we have tried the approach of appreciative inquiry. And I think that has much complementary role with theory U, that there are 4 stages, something like discovery, dreaming, also designing, and then the destiny that goes out. So I think it can also help and work together with the theory U that you are explaining.
Bishop, what's your name? Bishop's name? Cardinal?
Archbishop Ledesma.
Antonio.
I'm Archbishop Ledesma from the Philippines.
Oh, beautiful, Archbishop. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. You know, he's really talked of a very, very valuable, important process of change management, which is called the appreciative inquiry as a process. And there's a 5D process, all right? In that process, I'm not going to explain that, but what he says is 100% very, very important. Where you begin to inquire, and in order to inquire, you need to discover. And in order to discover, you need to ask questions. And in order to ask questions, what type of questions will you? So it's about tapping that spot. You know, it's known as a spot, small soft spot, where people feel excited and happy to talk about. So if you really want to get the confidence of your people, and I tell corporate leaders, don't search for what's going wrong. Appreciative inquiry says, please search for what's going right. And the moment you start searching for what's going right and invest your attention, and the quality of your attention that gets better, what's happening is that person or that team or that organization now is automatically moving towards, as human beings, we always move towards light, correct? It's human nature where there is that visibility. They now start beginning to act, right? They now start beginning to cooperate. They now started. So the 5D, yes, it's a very good, okay? Discover, dream, design, okay? And destiny, that is create your own future. Thank you very much, Archbishop from Philippines.
Actually, we could carry on for another 10 minutes, 10 minutes for you.
Okay, yes.
Then we go for lunch. We are hungry already.
All right. I'm going to skip this one particular slide, okay? Because you guys are so good that I'm sure you know what this is all about. If I have a chance, I'll talk about it. I've talked about it, no doubt. Yes, we're going to do a quick Mentimeter exercise. Are we all ready with your mobiles? All right. How many levels of listening are there? How many?
Yes.
4? Okay, good. Now I'm going to ask you a reflective question, and you're going to key your answer over there on your mobile. How many hours a day we are awake? Whatever. I normally sleep in the afternoon, so I less hours awake, okay? So the question now we are asking is, okay, all of you logged in Mentimeter? Put your hands up. Yes, that's the PIN code. And respond to this question, okay? Now, are you putting it? How many of you got your Mentimeter connected? Not many. Can the team come up and quickly? Oh, they started. Oh, wonderful. We're getting the response. One thing we have to also acknowledge is that all 4 levels of listening are part of our life. Am I right? It's not any one level of listening is better than the other, because it depends on the situation, the level of listening, yeah? Keep that in mind.
If anyone needs any help, just raise your hand. One of us will come to you.
So, level 1 listening is listening with in the space of what I already know, confirming what I already know. Level 2 is actually searching for disconfirming information. The source of this comes from outside, and I make every effort towards that. The third one is empathy, empathetic listening, and that is what you all understand. And last is generative listening. Generative listening really happens, all right? And you get to know that you're in that mode when something new is emerging, something different is happening. A new life in that situation is generated, all right? And that happens in a generative dialogue, okay? And that's generative listening. Wonderful. Okay, we have how many responses? Only 48 responses. Why? Very, very close spread of listening, huh? And I really want to admire and congratulate you because I have to. Imagine how close these three levels of listening are. 28% empathetic, 27% downloading, 2% factual, 19% generative listening, 1%. And very often it also gives you an idea of the nature. Very often, this also gives you an insight, all right, into the nature of possibly your engagement, and the nature of what you're doing. But this is marvelous, marvelous in my perspective, all right? I must. But I think with a little more going deeper, we will start becoming more conscious of our levels of listening, okay? So don't worry if tomorrow you feel that something has shifted because of a self-awareness growing. Is it okay? You don't know. I have a next question for you before we go for lunch. The next, you have one more Mentimeter over there? The second one. So this is what you currently, all right, are practicing, correct? This is what you are currently practicing in your work environment, in your this thing. And let us see what would it look like at the next question. the next question is, what is your desired point distribution to successfully envisage and actualize new future pathways? Okay? What is your desired in order to actualize new and future desired pathways? $55 responses. I'm tempted to add one more response, which will be very interesting. If I add that response, will it, where's my friend, Princeton? It'll take me 5 minutes. Can I add one more question? No, you have to type it, no? Okay, then don't worry. All right, but this is wonderful. You know, it's giving you a sense, all right, of what is your desired. And you're looking at generative listening, which really means that we sincerely are looking at, okay, a lifestyle of leadership where we are focusing on at an individual level right now, but also then when we meet with our teams and all that, is this whole aspect of consciously doing what it takes to open the mind, all right? And what does it take to open the mind is to suspend judgment. Are you with me? Now, this is going to be a very, very important aspect, to be consciously aware when I am, what's that voice of judgment is kicking into my engagement, my conversation, all right? And build that consciousness so that, number one, I am able to suspend that, all right? And see with fresh eyes and see. Only then I will move on. I can't go to generative listening unless I overcome the voice of judgment, overcome the voice of cynicism, and overcome the voice of fear. And we have to overcome this. We can't do this. It's difficult to do this on our own, but I can tell you, with the power of the Holy Spirit and the prayer, we can do, because what I'm talking about, the courage we need, we will get. Our readiness to be humble, this calls for humility, all right? So at our level, to be able to be conscious about that, humility, and be vulnerable, all right? I don't need to self-protect. That's going to be then leading us to this state of presencing where I can make that leap into something new, different, trusting that the Lord is going to be with us, and He has promised that with us, all right? And He wants definitely the church to grow and to expand, and people to experience us more differently. So with this, I think we are all hungry and would like to give it a rush, and we will be back over here at 3 p.m., okay, sharp, because there's one exercise I haven't done. We'll do it now.